Hey, it's Ben again. I'm gonna do another video about the Drambo app by Beep Street. It's still in beta. I wanted the focus of this video to be about using Drambo as an AUV3 app within other DAWs. So the last video I was showing Drambo just in standalone mode and kind of covering the basic features. I'll talk about some additional features within Drambo, but I also wanted to specifically look at Drambo as an AUV3. So it works as an AUV3 instrument, a sound generator, but then it's also an audio effect. You can additionally use it as an audio effect that sends MIDI within DAWs that allow you to do that. And then it also, at least in AUM and probably in other DAWs too, you can use it in the MIDI slot as a MIDI effect. So it doesn't produce any sound there, but it's still a MIDI sequencer. So there's obviously a lot of cool things that you can do with it. And we're probably going to find out more cool things that you can do with it, but that's going to be the focus of this video. So I'm going to start off by talking about Drambo as a MIDI sequencer. But you do not have to use this in the MIDI slot to use it as a MIDI sequencer. So it makes just as much sense, at least in DAWs that allow you to do this, to use it as an instrument. So if you want to have any sound in Drambo in addition to MIDI sequencing going on, you can do that. I'm using my MIDI controller, so I already have that routed in. Just like a 61 key MIDI keyboard. And I'm going to route Drambo into Lagrange by Iceworks, and start tapping my keyboard. You can see the pad's lighting up, so it's receiving MIDI, but we're not hearing anything in Lagrange, even though it's connected. So what we need to do is add the MIDI output module. And you can see there's a couple different MIDI modules, but MIDI output, it should... Not working. You have to set it to MIDI out, I guess. Okay. And I just have like a basic init patch on Lagrange that I'm going to keep using for now. So now I can play. Great, super easy. Now if I go to another track, you can see the MIDI, by default, is going to start going to the active track. So, whatever. And if I want to change how a track receives MIDI, I just tap on the track. By default, it's going to be set to active track, so that means if you tap into another track, MIDI is going to that track. But then you can also set it to always receive MIDI or to never receive MIDI. You can change the channel or have it set to receive MIDI on any channel, sort of like an omni mode. And then also you can set it to only receive a specific MIDI note. This is really nice if you were trying to set up like a bank of non-melodic sounds or samples or whatever across a bunch of tracks. If you have like a Launchpad or some other MIDI controller, you can keep it all on one channel from one controller and control a bunch of different sounds. Pretty easy. So now to start inputting steps, instead of using the keys or the little like keypads, I guess, down here, or doing it in AUM, I can actually just tap in, hold a step down, play some notes, and it's going to put in that chord. And then if we go in to step, you can tap on different steps, and you're going to see each individual note that you play in shows up here. It'll show you the velocity that you played. I don't think this is a velocity sensitive patch. And then you can actually set like offset here, and when you're recording in live, offset and gate will not be these settings. But here's where you can sort of edit the notes if you want to, and you can change these notes. I'm going to leave them the same, but you would tap in and then play a different note, and it would respond. Okay. This is an 8-bar loop, so I can change it back to 4 bars. Sort of expecting it to loop back over. It's kind of repetitive. Not a whole lot going on. So I'm going to start playing with some of the step components. So just like modules, step components, they show up as modules, and you can drag a module over and put something in between. So maybe I want some of these notes to only play every second bar. So if you're looking at the flow of this right now, each step component is dealt with in the system or within the app left to right. So we have MIDI note D4 plays and then a cycle condition. Cycle condition says only play this condition every second loop or length, and then it's going to use that condition for any module or step components to the right of it. So the second 2 notes are going to play on the second loop every 2 loops. So maybe on another event on just this last note, you have cycle condition, which is like there's sort of an order, but there's still variety. You can also do random conditions. So maybe 50% of the time, this last note is going to play. So right now, it's sort of all or nothing. You just look at the conditions and the step components left to right. So you can't have like 2 separate chains of probability or cycle conditions or whatever else. But there's still, a lot of variety you can add that way. So now I want to take the sequence and do something with the actual parameters in Lagrange, so it's not just this simple thing. First thing I'm going to do, I am going to double the length of the pattern. And what should happen if I already have a pattern and I double or extend the length of the pattern, it should actually double it, and then I could record over it or add other steps within 8 bars or 8 beats rather here. But you can double your loop or quadruple it, and it will fill in the pattern information that you already have. Let's just stop that. So what I'm going to do, first thing, going to make Drambo a source of MIDI for MIDI control within AUM. And depending on what DAW you're using, this will probably take on a different setting that you have to control, but this is how you do it in AUM. So Drambo is now a MIDI control for AUM. And let's just go into Lagrange, find some parameters. Well, I'll set it up here first. So to control anything with the modules within Drambo, we have to set up a MIDI CC generator. And what that's going to do is send out MIDI CC messages. And the other thing that we have to do, currently at least, in Drambo, each individual kind of message that you want to send through MIDI, you have to send through its own MIDI output. And I'll remember that you have to set what destination you want for each output. So you would have one output for pitch information, and not just pitch, but note, so gate and timing and velocity. But then if you want to send any CC out, you would have to have an individual MIDI output for that CC. So let's just arbitrarily say this is going to be CC 15. And first we'll go in and set it up in Lagrange. So we're looking for 15. And we're going to go to the Lagrange channel, see what parameters are available. Should be a filter. Yeah, filter frequency. So we've got 15. We'll turn it on. Okay, so it's not doing anything yet. Looking at the modules, first thing we need to do, we need to give this CC generator some sort of signal input so that it's changing the CC. And I'm going to start with just a knob. And the knob is just, it lets me set a constant value. Okay, so I'm already, this is fun. I'm in Drambo and I'm controlling this parameter. So to set that parameter locking, I just have to tap on a step. And I think something's happening with me messing around on the mouse, so I'm going to record in some additional notes. Don't know why it's not recording. Still set to record. Okay, it was recording the whole time. Disregard that. So I'm not going to use the mouse. I think that's what was screwing me up before. So I can set P-locks. It's a little bit more interesting. So what I'd like to do now is maybe use some of the modulation that's available in Drambo. So I can do an LFO or an envelope or anything that I really want. Let's use a regular AD. So I'm going to switch over from knob being the signal, and that's what has all the P-locks on it, to just a regular envelope. And obviously this is something that I could do probably within Lagrange, but what I cannot do is set all these P-locks in Lagrange. So maybe I want to mess with the attack on a couple of these steps, or the decay, or whatever. It's kind of cool. You can have more than one modulation going into this. So it's just a signal input. It's coming from the envelope right now. What I could do is set up a mixer or an adder. Adder just takes the values. It doesn't allow you to set any levels. So we have the envelope happening. We also have the value occurring. Maybe I want to do an LFO. So what I almost certainly can't do, just a little, is do audio rate modulation in Lagrange. I think their LFOs only Lagrange's LFO only goes up to 30 hertz or something like that. I don't know why I would want to do that, but I'm able to, and I can of course, change the LFO on specific steps. I can make the LFO bipolar or not bipolar, and that means it's going up. If it's not set to bipolar, it's just increasing the value. If it's set to bipolar, there's like a 0 value, it goes up and below that value. So that's how you sequence MIDI within Drambo. It's really easy, quick to come up with sort of interesting sequences. So now I'd like to play around with running MIDI from another app into Drambo. There's so many cool MIDI effects that you can use on iOS, and then there's all sorts of hardware that you might want to capture MIDI from. And it's really easy to do that. So I've got Rhythm Bud from Chem OK. I really like this one. I'm going to select just like a preset ARP that I already have. So what do I need to do? I need to take my MIDI controller, and then that's going to run into Drambo for now. And then we're going to need to send the MIDI from Drambo into a sound generator, and it's not going to do anything because I don't have anything set up to send MIDI from Drambo. So we'll set that up again. Just MIDI output for now. MIDI out. I can hear something. Okay, so I just want to record this. Now, if I record it quantized, it's not going to play back the same way, because it was not playing in a quantized way. So if I need to delete some steps, it's easy to do. I just go to edit, and I can tap them all out individually. That's not a problem. But if I want to do it quickly, I clear those steps, and then I go to my recording settings. There's a couple things you can do here. You can turn off quantization. You can turn off overdubbing if you want to like protect what you have recorded. And then you can also change the P-lock recording, which I haven't done anything with, to only record on active steps or to record every step. So if you had just a couple notes in, but you were doing like a sweep on some parameter, it would record every step. Or you can set it to off. I'll leave it where it is now. So we'll record again now that it's not quantized. And that's a more accurate representation of what was coming in from Chem. Okay. But now, I have the MIDI in here. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. I can go get my P-locks again. I need a MIDI output, and I need something here. Maybe do like an envelope, and we need to send our I think I need to reset everything MIDI-wise, yeah. Just a second, we should hear that. There we go. Okay, so maybe if I don't like this particular, I don't like the trigger on every single setting. What I can do this is the gate input, and when you have your default setting, the gate is coming from the MIDI note. So every single MIDI note in the sequencer is sending a gate to the envelope, and then that triggers the MIDI CC generator. But if we maybe want like a longer trigger, we don't want it to send on every one, or if I want manual control over that envelope, I can hit the trigger button. And I could set the trigger to be something else. It could be like a very slow LFO. I think it'll work with either pulse or saw. So there's all sorts of ways that you can connect this modulation together. I've been having a lot of fun just exploring those sort of options. So anyways, that's MIDI recorded in from like an external source, my arpeggio, and then it's now saved as a pattern. I can play with these notes. I can duplicate it into another pattern that I could then change and mess around with and do whatever I want. I could set my parameter locks on it. So there's really a lot you can do just to control other apps. So now I want to just play around a little bit with Drambo as an audio effect. It works really well as an audio effect too. And I'm still going to play around with Lagrange for now. I've already got like just another sequence going on. Took away the parameter locks. So go to the audio effect slot. As far as I can tell, there is no difference between the FX and then the MIDI effects, aside from the fact that MIDI effects obviously sends out MIDI as well. So I'm going to use that. There may be some other difference, but I don't think so. When you open the audio effect, the default view is just the main track view with no individual tracks set up and one audio input module. So the audio input module is actually just a module, and you can add more than one. It generates sound, so it's under generator. And then that's going into the output of the app over here. But you can put an audio input module on a track if you wanted to. That would be fine. But I'm not going to do that because I don't need to. So at the very least, this is just a nice multi-effects unit. There's a lot of different cool sound processors in here. So it's got like a phaser. It's got a really nice sounding chorus. I think the reverb sounds pretty nice. And because it's Drambo, you can set your P-locks. So another thing that I can do, I can set up different chains of effects if I wanted to. I can set up, we'll add a mixer. And maybe what I want to have happen is I just want, let me add a delay also. Okay, so it's the audio input feeding into the delay, going into a phaser, going into a chorus, going into a reverb. You can actually put effects into your delay. And they can kind of run away and go crazy, so be careful as you're putting stuff in here, especially if you're wearing headphones or you have your speakers turned up loud. But that chorus is actually going back into the delay, like feeding back. And it sounds cool, but it's kind of messy. So what I can do is set it to go through an amp envelope that needs to be triggered. I think there's still some feedback or something. But if I set down a trigger, because that's where the amp envelope is going to open up from. This is the gate. So if I put that on the first one, so it goes in. So now it's not crazy out of control. The effect chain is only receiving audio when the envelope opens. And that could be sustained if I wanted it to get a little bit more sound in there. Now it's also got, I'm normally using the filter as a synthesis tool, but it's a nice filter. So not all of the effect parameters are modulatable, but you'll note that the delay rack, I can modulate the length of delay and the feedback and the wet signal. On the filter, I can of course modulate the cutoff, so I could take advantage of those features as well. I think that's fun. So you've got like a peaking EQ, and this is basically just like a very customizable, it's like one band of an EQ basically, and you can set up a bank of EQs if you want. And this isn't modulatable, but I could set P-locks on it, you know. Now, I can also send out MIDI from this track. So let's see what I could do. I'm going to change MIDI coming from this Drambo. Well, actually, I won't. I'm going to keep it that way. But then I'm also going to control Lagrange with this MIDI effects Drambo. So I'm going to add in a couple more notes, because it's already going to play the C. And I need to do my MIDI output. I can put that anywhere in the chain. The MIDI output isn't going to mess with anything. Okay. I could also... Maybe I want to set this to like a really high resonance. And I want to control cutoff with the pitch. So I can do like key tracking. I don't know. There's just so much you can do with it. Just playing with that like simple loop. What else is there? There's... I'm going to turn this down a little bit. There's a nice shaper, and this is like a distortion unit. It's got a couple different algorithms. These are modulatable. Yeah, and it, you know, this is getting, there's a lot in here. I can sort of mix and match the chains. So if it gets too muddy, I can like just bring in a little bit of, you know, one signal. Maybe I want the decimator to actually just get its input from the amp envelope. So there's one other like audio input tool. There's a couple other ones I want to play around with. I'm gonna stop using Lagrange. Let's get rid of everything. So I'm just gonna start fresh. So we'll add in another Drambo effects unit. You know, a lot of people had been asking about being able to sort of set up your own impactor patches from the old Beep Street app, where it sort of had like a resonator from the audio input, and that makes its appearance in Drambo. So it's probably going to sound kind of weird. It's going to be hard for me to talk through the Modal Resonator, but I'm going to. So I have another audio effect Drambo instance set up. It's got the audio input, and under processor, it's now the Modal Resonator. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. It's really noisy. might be a little bit better. It's just gonna sound better if I'm just snapping my fingers. This is a glass, but I can play with the parameters, turn up the decay. I think it's almost picking up my the sound from my headphones, so I don't want it to feed back into my ears because that could be bad. But it has a couple different models. They sound different tonally. Sort of sounds like they have it's a different material or a different membrane that's resonating in some way. And of course, I could set this to play to a sequence, so pitch can be synced. So let me just put in a real quick sequence. It's not going to do anything yet, but when I turn keyboard tracking on, it's going to play different keys as I'm talking, and I'm going to turn up the decay so it's a little bit more pronounced. I don't know. This obviously doesn't sound good because it's just me talking. But it sounds kind of cool on percussion, or it's my attempt at a beatbox. So the other thing is I don't have a way to do multiple. I don't have another microphone that I can use, rather. So I was gonna try playing around with a piezo pickup, but I'd have no way to record my voice. But you can do that, and it's a very cool effect. And you can play with decay and material. Bass is sort of like how heavy the material or the vibrating, the resonator is. I don't know the science behind it, so that's kind of what it is. You can control the pitch on your own. And then I think maybe where the sound is being picked up from is the position. Anyways, I can make some more noises. Sort of like a glassy, more metallic. And you can use this as just a regular effect too. So, this sounds really cool on noise or other drum samples or synthesized drums, or even in melodic synth batches, especially with key tracking on. So I'm gonna turn the crazy sound off of my voice. Now it's just me. But that is Drambo as an audio effect, or some of what you can do with Drambo as an audio effect. The last thing I wanted to show in this video is just, to show that Drambo works in other DAWs. So I'm going to play with it just as a sound module in Nano Studio 2. That's, where I do a lot of more composing. AUM is, for a lot of people, it's better for jamming, as it were. And then I'll also play around with it in Beatmaker 3. I'm sort of using it as a sound source that you could then sample and do other stuff with. So I'll leave this all here so I can be talking. But we'll go into Nano Studio. Probably have to open a new project. Although this is Deliver Dope. So here, I think I already have it loaded up. I'm using the sampler again. So it does state saving. That's nice. The drums are not from Drambo. The drums are just my own drum patch, but you can put them into Drambo. But, got my slices set up here. Let's open up a new patch, or new project, whatever. And I love the Drambo is, don't know how well, I've never used my mouse in Nano Studio before, so it doesn't seem like it's taking great, but It's okay. It's going to be set up to work, I think, right off the bat. Yeah. So in some DAWs, you might have to check that your MIDI settings are correct. The default project for Drambo is 8 tracks, but I think they're all set up just to receive on active track. So especially in like Beatmaker 3, it might be like you just might have to check your channel, especially if you're like sending it from a specific pad. Anyways, I'm not gonna spend much time here. So there's my little loop. I think it's gonna loop back. I've been spending all my time in Drambo, so I feel like forgotten some of the mechanics. So here, it's not playing a recorded sequence from Drambo, it's just receiving MIDI from Nano Studio. And I don't remember where the like CPU view is. You can see it's playing at 4%. Not that this is a deep patch at all. If we want to do some more stuff here, we could set up a couple more FM operators. Another addition from like the new version of the beta that's been released, which is like incremental changes happening. Now the FM operator has phase modulation in addition to frequency modulation. So it's just some more sounds to play with. It's kind of cool. And these things can be modulated now. Normally I've been using like LFOs or envelopes as modulation. Just play with like feedback. So that's pretty standard. It's a low frequency oscillator. That's fine. But you can also, I think the reason this wasn't making any noise is because there's no FM. This FM operator is not receiving any of this input. So that was my mistake, not anything wrong. However, any signal can be used to modulate other signal within Drambo. So it doesn't have to be a LFO or an envelope. It can be an oscillator. I can't promise you that this is going to sound good at all, but you're able to do it. Receive a very little bit of FM from this operator. Let's turn that down. Okay, but if I want to modulate this FM amount, I can do that from an oscillator. So that is just a regular oscillator playing at 130 Hertz, and you're hearing it modulate the amount of FM. So you can do like FM modulation on a filter. This might sound kind of good. And you can have whatever sequence you're playing from your DAW, whatever MIDI that's coming in. But you can set up like dynamic P-locks, P-locks that are going to play no matter what MIDI notes are coming in. So it's just like an empty pattern of different like modulations. I'm just going to set something in real quick. I think I accidentally tapped a different track or something. Think what it's doing. I was playing the sequence, so it kind of took those MIDI notes in. That's fine. And that's actually sort of a It's a cool way to like generate your own sequence sort of randomly. It's like set up a MIDI source, play something in a loop, and then just like tap in. Like, I don't know. Oh, it's an A. Whatever. There's a chord, and then this is my sequence. I don't want to do that right now, so I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm just gonna stop it. I think there's another way to keep that from happening, but I don't need to figure it out right now. So I'll set my P-locks up. And so now my P-locks are going to play no matter what MIDI notes are coming in from the DAW. So you could have like one loop that you're doing in your DAW, and then you could have like 5 different patterns of like different P-lock settings or whatever. And this is going to be, you know, I can set up different scenes to play. I was playing around with that last time, so like detune or something. I don't know, you can't really hear that. Maybe it'll be more prevalent on like this one. Anyways, super easy to set up, and it's just like, you know, it's a sampler, it's a synthesizer, it's an audio effect. So it can be an audio effect in any of these apps too. And then using it as a sound source in Beatmaker 3, there's a couple cool things that you can do with it. This is Drambo. It's just sort of like the thing that I press on. So in addition to all the other cool things that you can do, I have to find it. Here we are. Up until now, we've only been looking at like sequencing it from other MIDI apps or using the internal sequencer. Just gonna use a preset. So I've got like a basic poly. That sounds great. It doesn't sound that great. It sounds good. It's just, it's a simple patch. That's all. Currently there's 2 sequencers. There's a gate sequencer. So what this is going to do, it's just going to send gate messages to whatever is on the track. It's kind of annoying. It's just playing the same note constantly. I think you can change it. Yeah, so it's basically going to just send gate, and then this synthesizer patch is still getting its pitch from the track, and whatever note I play in the DAW is going to work there. So I can slow it down to like just 2 steps a beat. I can change the length of the sequence. So it's gate and velocity. This isn't a velocity sensitive patch. Yes, it is. This is probably easier for me to set like here, yeah. So this is playing 4 beats currently, and I at least need to set it to 8 beats so that I can get to 16. Now it's getting its clock from the track, and the track is getting its clock basically through the DAW. It's at 73 beats per minute. But there are ways that you can alter the clock signal, actually. And a lot of those are under the miscellaneous utility section. So there's like a couple different time modules. So scale time is going to allow us to either like speed up time or slow it down. So now it's like 1:1. But if we change our clock signal for the sequencer, do like really fast, crazy clocks, or like really slow that you want to be this slow right now, but you could. And then you can do like odd divisions of the clock, so like 5/7 or whatever. Now you probably want me to add another note because this is getting to sound really repetitive. So I'm going to add another sequencer. That's the CV sequencer. So CV is control voltage, like in the modular vocabulary. So it's just data that's being set to any module, and it controls different parameters. So it can control the pitch too. And we just have to go to our instrument patch, select the pitch input, and hook it up to the CV sequencer output. Now, it sounds crazy. You might speed it up. It sounds kind of like glitchy and computery. But what we might want to do is put this CV data into some, at least musical, confines, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. So there's a CV quantizer that quantizes to note, so we can just at least pick a scale that we want it to be on. And then instead of getting the note data directly from CV, we'll take it from the quantizer. So you can get like kind of generative patches set up, and if I want to, I can start sampling this in BeatMaker, and then it's just going to be sound that I can play with later on. So let's stop recording, and I think if we go to the sampler, and then we might normalize that. Sure, and then, there I've got my stuff to play around with, and I can chop it up, or I can just save that and use it as like an audio track in some other project or whatever. But if we want to play around with this just a little bit more, because we're having so much fun, there's all sorts of other stuff that you can do. So this could be coming from a CV sequencer, but I could set it up to be like a random source if I want to. We could use a sample and hold LFO to go through the CV sequencer. It's kind of cool. Or we could use this random modulator, which is basically every trigger. And there are no triggers right now, so let's just set it all to like C. So every single trigger point, it selects a different random value that gets sent to the CV sequencer, and then that goes to the pitch of the sequencer. It's getting its gate value from here, and I could set a different clock. So I can make like a little rhythm sequence in the CV sequencer. I can LFO the clock, or I can modulate the clock rather. Let's do that. Where I could use another sequencer to control the clock divisions. No, we don't need to do that, but it's something that you can do. So a couple other things you could do. We'll just go back to regular time in a second here. So there's scale time. There's also reverse time. So we can have it run backwards if we wanted to. I'm going to scale it again. I'll just crank up the BPMs. Runs a little bit faster. There's a bend time, which is kind of going to let you It's almost like a swing function, not swing directly, but you're going to see now it sort of like skips in, speeds up, slows down. If you want to see what any signal is doing, especially when you start like playing around with different types of signal and modulating things, the oscilloscope is really useful. So that's another one of the utilities. Yeah, you can. Gyroscope is a modulation source. So right now we're looking at the oscilloscope for the sound. But we could, if we wanted to, make it a little bit louder so you can see it. We can look at any modulation source and see what that looks like. So you can sort of see the time going up a little bit, and instead of going up in a straight line, I know you can't see it very well, it's like going up sort of in this staggered way. That's the bend. I know you can't hear it very well right now, but it's sort of a cool trick that you can do on time, but you can do it on other signal sources too. Anyways, Drambo works in other DAWs other than just AUM, and obviously it's a cool sound source, not even using like the parameter locking and the sequencing that's available from the Drambo sequencer. You can use the DAWS sequencer, or you can use a sort of like generative sequencing ability. So one other thing that I wanted to share before I finish this video is using Drambo as an MPE responsive sound source or instrument. So yeah, it can do MIDI polyphonic expression. And I don't have any MPE actual physical controllers, and I haven't played around with it a lot, but I do have KB1 from Kai Aris Numerical Audio, and that'll work just fine as like a demonstration. So a couple things I need to check. In Drambo first, once we open up I'll just use that little like basic poly patch I've been playing with. You need to have your track that you're using set to receive from MPE. Otherwise, the distribution of voices isn't going to work correctly. So that's the first thing that we need to do. And then you need to receive MIDI modulation from somewhere. So the way we're going to do that is just through another module, one of the modulation modules. You have MIDI key pressure. So if you actually had like a Seaboard Rise or any other MPE controller, I think that's what you would use, because there's channel aftertouch and then polyphonic key aftertouch. But then I'm just going to use the MIDI CC. And I have my MIDI controller, so you can learn. We're going to set it up to receive MIDI from my controller. If I switch it to learn, it's going to recognize MIDI messages coming in. I have it on MIDI mode right now, so you're not going to see it doing anything, but or MPE mode. Anyways, you can learn MIDI, and then you can also just set it to the setting that you need. And so I know that KB1 sends aftertouch by default on channel 74, so that's what I'm going to use. And we are going to set the modulation source for the filter cutoff to the MIDI CC input, and we'll push up that modulation a little bit more. So now if I go and I change this to the MPE whatever keyboard, once we route KB1 into Drambo, it's going to work. Once we change it to more than one voice, I guess. It's probably pretty important. anyways, any parameter that can receive modulation can receive MIDI messages through MPE. So there's going to be a lot of cool, like creative, expressive patches that people come up with. So I'm excited to hear that. Anyways, that's probably enough for just this video. Thanks for watching.